Hello, welcome to my Substack podcast with the inestimable economist, John Lott. Went to UCLA, got his PhD in economics, also at UCLA, has written many books, taught at University of Chicago, at Yale, has been associated with AEI, the Hoover Institution, the Sentencing Commission, missed about 20 things there, John. But most famously, I think, and certainly what he is hated the most for, is his impeccable research on guns. One thing I wanted to start, welcome, John.
Great to talk to you. Thanks for having me on.
I'd really like to get into some of your really amazing research. I don't know if you've been paying it. Well, obviously you saw the shooting at the Christian school recently, and there's been a lot of hoo-ha in the Tennessee legislature, with similar to the gun grabber response to you refusing to debate. You have these three Democrats who are just bringing bullhorns to the floor of the Tennessee legislature, leading chants. A few of them were then expelled. But I was watching the coverage of both the chanting and the expelling on MSNBC, and as I understand it, the Democrats don't want children to be shot dead, and the Republicans do want children to be shot dead.
You understand it very well, then. I mean, that's basically the bottom line, right? Look, people say, people on my side don't want to do anything. I want to do something, but I want to do something that actually works with regard to this. So they go and push for these background checks on the private transfers of guns. Obama was pushing for it constantly. Biden's mentioned it a number of times. I want somebody in the press to go and ask them, would it have stopped this last mass public shooting? Would it have stopped any this century? Can you name one mass public shooting this century that this would have been stopped?
I have a question for you on that. Would it have even stopped? I mean, obviously there's the Brady law. That's the background check, federal background check that's required because Brady was Reagan's press secretary. He was shot in the head when John Hinckley tried to shoot him. It wouldn't have even stopped Hinckley, would it have?
No. I mean, I don't. Look, one can go through the ones back to the 80s or something. I just know that it takes a little while to go through each of these cases. But I can just say since 2000 on, it's clear that none of these cases would have been stopped. You look at things, people want to go and push red flag laws. That's the big thing now in Tennessee. Two previous governors have come out for it, one Democrat, one Republican. The current governor is saying that he would support something like that. Many Republicans have come out for it now in the last week. Look, if somebody's a danger to themselves or others, there's already much better laws on the books in all 50 states, and these are called involuntary commitment laws. If you think somebody's a danger to themselves or others, you contact the police will come out. If the police think that there's, quote, a reasonable probability that which is like a 20% chance or so, that somebody's a danger to themselves or others, they can take them in for a psychiatric review. Most states require 2, some 3 psychiatric experts to look at the person. There's a 24 to 72 hour hold depending on the state. If the experts agree that there's, quote, a reasonable chance that the person is in fact a danger to themselves or others, then can be an immediate court hearing. If you can't afford a lawyer, one's provided for you. And then there's evidence that's provided. And if the judge thinks it's likely that you are in fact a danger to yourself or others, the judge then has a wide range of options. The judge can go and say, look, if you agree to voluntarily talking to mental health care experts, we'll have another hearing in a week or 2. We'll evaluate how things are going. They could take away your driver's license. They could take away your guns. In the most extreme case, they could involuntarily commit you.
So this is true in all 50 states?
All 50 states have had it for like 50 years, 40 years. Even the federal government has that. But what red flag laws do is they essentially get rid of all those protections. The only thing that you can have happen to you with a red flag laws is take away your guns. So about 99% of the time that red flag laws are used, they're used for concerns about suicide, is simply taking away a person's guns. if you're concerned about them committing suicide, a really serious response. There aren't other ways you can go and commit suicide. If you really believe that somebody is suicidal,
Right.
why only take away their guns? And so, and you can harm other people in other ways, even in that 1%. You can drive a car down a sidewalk or in a parade or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you really believe somebody's suicidal, you know, maybe you want to commit them in some way. Maybe you want to get mental health care help in some way. The thing is, also, you know, it's a lot easier to have a new law where you don't have the types of protections in it than if you have an existing law that you have to pull things out of, because there's a lot more questions that come up with those types of things. So what you find is that, first of all, what happens with red flag laws, the judge gets a written complaint. He doesn't talk to anybody. He doesn't talk to the person who the complaint is about. Simply based on that written complaint, he makes a judgment whether or not to take away a person's guns. And then, and it could be up to a month, depending upon the state, there'll be a hearing. The thing is, if you talk to lawyers, what they'll tell you is that it's going to cost about $10,000 to go through the hearing. I may want to keep my guns, but if the only thing that can happen to me with a red flag law is they temporarily take away my guns, what you find is almost nobody hires a lawyer to go through the process there. I mean, if that's the worst that can happen, is it worth $10,000 to me not to temporarily lose my guns? And most people say, no, it's not worth that. And so
also, there have been some deaths with, I mean, in some states, Maryland, I think, was one, maybe Connecticut, but on an ex parte order, one person goes in. It could be a bitter ex-girlfriend. It could be a niece who wants to inherit the house from you, goes in and reports, no, I think that this man is going to be a danger. You need to take his guns. They send in a SWAT team the next morning, no warning, show up at the door. And that's how at least one man has gotten killed, because he was arguing with the police about it. And people who knew him said peaceful as could be, but he did have a temper. And he gets woken up out of the blue at 5 a.m. by a SWAT team demanding his guns. Yeah, that would get me a little testy too.
Right.
Why do you think there haven't been more? I mean, maybe there are. We don't know about the mass shootings that haven't happened, but the two cases that really leap out to me are in terms of mental illness are the Joker in Aurora, Colorado. And Jared Loughner in Colorado, because as was pretty well documented after Jared Loughner's shooting spree, he went in to get a tattoo, and everybody in the tattoo shop is saying, that's the next Columbine. And, you know, students in class were afraid of him and warning their friends, I'm just worried he's going to bring a gun to class someday. So there seemed to be, warning signs going off all over the place. Same thing with that nut who dressed up as the Joker. Are shrinks afraid of getting sued or something?
No. I mean, look, if you look at all the mass public shootings over the last 25 years, what you'll find is that over half of these mass public shooters were actually seeing mental health care professionals prior to their attack. And yet, including the Colorado Batman movie theater case, in not one single case did these mental health care experts identify these individuals as a danger to themselves or others. And there's a whole academic psychology, psychiatric literature on why they can't identify these individuals. Part of it is that these are so rare. So you take something like schizophrenia. There's about 2.5 million people in the United States that suffer from schizophrenia at any point in time. Over the last 25 years, you're talking about 1, maybe 2 of these individuals had schizophrenia. Generally, people with mental health care issues are less violent than the general population. Generally, they're also more likely to be victims of violence than people in the general population. Mm-hmm. If I have 2.5 million people, and I'm going to tell you as a psychiatric expert, pick the 1,000 people that you think are most likely. Even in the best of things, you're going to be wrong 999 times out of that, and possibly wrong all 1,000 times.
Right.
And so, I think that's a large part. The other part of it is psychology and psychiatry is largely, almost exclusively based on people with problems coming in to talk to you about their problems. We have Arthur Berg, who's been at Harvard, who's on our board of directors for the Crime Prevention Research Center. And his explanation is basically, you assume people are telling you the truth when they're the ones who are coming in and asking for help. And that's pretty much the whole model that psychiatry and psychology has. And so you have cases like the Buffalo mass murderer from last year. When he was in high school, at the end of the school year, a teacher had asked him what he was planning on doing over the summer. And he said he was going to go find a school that was holding summer school classes and shoot it up and then go and commit suicide. And so the teacher flagged him. He went and was interviewed by 2 mental health care experts. And he told the mental health care experts that he had just been joking and that the teacher, he probably shouldn't have said it, but it's just a stupid joke that he made. And they accepted him. And that's what happens quite frequently. So unless you're a moron, okay, and a lot of these guys are not that stupid. You can go and read things like the Santa Barbara murder from a few years ago. He has a long diary where he takes glee. In fact, one of the psychologists that he was seeing was the head of child psychiatry at Los Angeles Children's Hospital, one of the leading experts in the world on violence by young people. And yet he couldn't identify this individual as a danger to himself or others.
I see.
And in his diary, the Santa Barbara murderer was basically saying, look, I just tell him what unless I'm stupid, I just tell him that I'm not going to do anything. And he basically just accepts that.
Yes.
So, but look, here's what we do know. This
Well,
mass.
wait a second. Before you go to that, I wanted to ask you, how many shootings up? I don't know, all shootings, all murders. How many of them are school shootings? It seems like we've been getting more of them in the last few years, but it's still a very small percentage.
Yeah, if you from 2000 on, okay, where you've had 4 more people killed in a school shooting, you're talking about 10 now, or not even 10. Yeah, with the 10 with the one last week. And one thing people don't do.
Wait, there are 10 school shootings.
Right, 10 school shootings, including the one last week. So one thing people don't do is put this in per capita rates. So in the United States, we have over 330 million people. A country like Germany has 80 million people, all right? Germany, over that same period of time, has had 3 mass public school shootings. One where there was like 18, another one where there was like 17 killed, another one where there was like 5 killed. And the thing is, if you adjust for population, that's the equivalent of 12. Finland's had 2. Okay, Norway's had 1. Finland and Norway have like 5 million people each. So that's like 1/60th the population that we have here in the United States. And for some reason, and nobody would just compare the total number of murders in California with Rhode Island.
Right.
Right. But that's essentially what they do with these mass public shootings. Brazil has had several school shootings that have occurred. Just for them in population, there are many places around the world where even school shootings have much higher rates. But you keep on hearing that the United States is unique somehow in terms of this. And many of these countries have extremely strict gun controls. In Germany, it costs you thousands of dollars. You have to go through 2 psychological screening tests. It takes over a year to go and get a gun. One of the things you find with these shootings, not just in the United States, but in other places, is just the extreme amount of time and effort that these people take to planning these attacks. This killer last week, apparently it's come out that this person had many books and journals on other mass public shootings and had been reading through them carefully. The Sandy Hook killer, according to police, had spent over 2.5 years planning the attack. The killer in that case had studied mass public shootings over the previous 40 years, had apparently, according to one police report, graphed out the relationship between the number of people killed in attacks and the amount of media coverage that it got.
Wow.
His goal was apparently to go and kill more people than the Norway killer had killed, because he, just looking at shooting deaths, had shot to death 67 people, which is significantly more than any mass public shooting here in the United States. So he wanted to beat that. I can't prove it, but I wouldn't be surprised that the reason why he attacked the elementary school was shock value, that he thought it would help get more media coverage than if he attacked some other type of target that was there.
Mm-hmm.
But, one thing that you see, and it's just is really completely irresponsible for the media and how they cover this, is they refuse to cover the parts of the manifestos and diaries where these mass murderers explain why they picked the targets that they did.
Yes. Yes.
And so, the New York Times, I don't know how many editorials, at least 6 or 7, that they've had talking about the case, and how many news stories over the last year. Usually they describe him as a right-wing or conservative. The guy was an environmentalist nutso. He hated minorities. Anybody who's a racist, they automatically classify as a conservative or right-winger. But the guy hated minorities because he was upset that they had too many kids. He thought population was much too high in the United States. Most conservatives I know are upset about people having kids, and I'm being facetious. But he calls himself a socialist. He called himself an eco-terrorist. I assume, you hang around with conservatives. I assume almost all the conservatives call themselves eco-terrorists. And so,
startling fact, which is why, oh my gosh, they go after you on it and call you a liar. And I love how there needs to be a term for debunking the debunkers, because they're always putting up fake debunkings of you, and then you have to do the research to come. And that is, and first, the top line conclusion about all public mass shootings since, I think, 2000, where they have taken place, and particularly in the school mass shootings, where they have taken place and where they haven't taken place.
Right. Well, it's something that needs to be talked about, and that is, you keep seeing these guys attacking places where their victims can't have guns. This attack last week in Nashville, one of the things that the police chief and one of the city councilmen have made, though they haven't released the manifesto yet, is that this murderer had either one or two other places that they had targeted, but had decided not to go through with attacking them because worried about armed presence that were there at those places. Apparently they weren't schools, but there was some other targets that the person had. And so you go to a school that doesn't have anything on its website or signs or anything else warning that you could have armed people there. Look, we've studied all the school shootings, from anything from an accidental discharge where nobody's shot all the way up to a mass public shooting from 2000 on, okay? There are 20 states that allow teachers and staff to carry. It varies the number of schools. Some places like Utah and New Hampshire, if you have a concealed carry permit, you're a teacher, you're automatically allowed to carry. In other places, it's up to the school board or it's up to the school superintendent to decide whether or not people carry. In places like Texas, I think it's up to 40% of the school districts now have armed teachers. Unfortunately, Uvalde or Santa Fe weren't included in that list. You have other places like Oklahoma, which is 40%. Ohio is very high. So literally you have thousands of schools across the country where teachers and staff are able to carry. There has not been one attack where anybody's been wounded or killed during anything near school hours in any of those thousands of schools. Every single attack has occurred in places where teachers aren't allowed to carry. Yes. I mentioned the Buffalo mass murder. In his manifesto, he explicitly talks about his ideal target. Right up there at the top was he wanted to go to a place where he knew his victims wouldn't have permanent concealed handguns. He talks about his ideal targets being in areas where gun control is very strict, because he worries that somebody with a gun may be able to stop him. Here's the deal. Conservatives, I think, are making a mistake in the sense that they go and they talk about armed police officers.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that. What is the matter with the NRA? I remember they first started, they're like liberals. We just have to say something. Doesn't matter if it makes any sense. And I remember it was right after Sandy Hook.
Yeah, well, they
And
had
I'm sitting at
Hutchins.
TV thinking, stupid people can never, ever help you. That is the stupidest idea to have an armed guard. Duh,
Well,
shoot the armed guard.
Right, exactly. You're exactly right. Here's the problem. If you have one person in uniform there, the attacker has a huge strategic advantage. They can either wait for the person to leave before they attack, or they can pick another target to go after. Or, as you're implying, who do you shoot first? Because if you know that that's the only person with the gun and you take them out, you essentially have free reign to go after everybody else there. And having one person in uniform is kind of like a neon sign above them that says, please shoot me first.
Yes.
These guys have an incredibly difficult job that's there. And so, you have the two senators from Tennessee are putting out a bill now. If you're going to have an armed police officer there, please mandate that they can't be in uniform. Please mandate that they have to blend in, make them a staffer in the school, make them the PE coach or something like that that's going to be there. And,
No, but it would be nice. I mean, for the same reason as you describe or prove in More Guns, Less Crime, when the attacker doesn't know who has a gun. I mean, forget that we're going to have one person, one, chemistry teacher, math teacher, phys ed teacher, principal. Well, if he doesn't know who's armed, and even his not knowing, I mean, that's preventing even the idea of the attack. But once they start the attack, guns could be coming out from all over to stop the attacker. Of course, that makes the school safer, which is why I think MSNBC may be wrong. I think Republicans' position is not that they want dead children. They want solutions that actually work.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I try to get this point across. I've been saying it for many years, but I understand why some people feel safer with the police officer or somebody like that in there. But just, do you have air marshals on planes in uniform so that you can identify who the air marshal is? But they seem to understand that you don't have air marshals in uniforms.
Right.
But for some reason, they don't understand this point. Look, even if you're going to have somebody in uniform, if you also have teachers or staff who are concealed, that makes the job of that officer much safer, because when the attacker goes after the officer, then he reveals his position. And now he has to worry that somebody behind him or to the side might be able to go and stop him. Somebody, as you say correctly, that he hasn't been able to go and identify. The other thing, it's a lot less costly to go and have a teacher or a staff member or multiple ones armed. Look, I would just rather, in the most extreme, just rather have signs in front of the school that say, rather than saying this school is a gun-free zone, saying, warning, select teachers and staff at the school are carrying concealed and will use them to go and protect students and others at the school. Some places have those types of signs.
You're right. You're right, and actually homeowners do it. I prefer a real camera, but I know it's something people do if they don't want to fork out the money for a real camera, which is getting a lot cheaper, is just put up around their house things that look like cameras. Put up signs that say, dangerous dog, beware of dog. People understand it when they're talking about their own homes.
And, James O'Keefe, a number of years ago, had kind of a sting where some newspapers in New York had kind of printed the names of all the concealed carry permit holders in their areas. And so James had some of his people go up with gun-free zone signs to the editors of those newspapers, asking them if they could post, just saying, we really want to have strict gun control, guns are evil or bad. Will you help us by letting us put one of these signs in front of your yard? And the editors was hilarious because the editors were saying, look, I agree with you, guns are horrible, but nah, I don't think it would be wise for me to put up a sign like that. The thing is, people understand if you're really being stalked or threatened, if there is a really serious risk to you, putting a sign in front of your yard that says, this is a gun-free zone, the killers aren't going to say, boy, they don't allow guns in that home. I can't take my weapon in to go and attack them. What happens is the opposite, because now it's a magnet. It actually encourages the attack because they know that the victims there aren't going to be able to go and protect themselves. It's going to be easier targets. And so, it's not rocket science why you have so many of these successful mass public shootings occur in places where people are prevented from defending themselves.
Yeah, it's like a lobster tank.
Unsafe. Every fact and culture states got every lib out there feeling unsafe.